All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is my first time teaching here in the training room, and so it's already given me a couple of technology challenges, but I think we're on track now. So here we go. Got three people joining me here in person. I've got Jocelyn, Tyler, and Jeff, and lots of people joining me online. Ellie, Caitlin, Hart, Connor, Brooke, and Whitney. Who else am I missing here? And Tamisha. All right, so welcome everyone. So Tuesday, I think the training was about the inspections, right? Didn't you have an inspector as a guest speaker on Tuesday? Oh, okay, Jocelyn wasn't here. All right, so and so for the follow-up on that, today we're doing the navigating what we do after we have the inspections done on behalf, and we're looking at it from the buyer's point of view for the most part here today. So once we have the buyer's inspections completed, how do we go then about what do we do with that information moving forward? And so I'm going to start sharing screen here. Has everyone downloaded? I hope everyone downloaded the student manual here. Do I not have it open? There it is. All right. Nope, wrong one. There we go. All right. All right. Why inspections matter. So welcome to the class on navigating the inspection process in real estate transactions. Inspections represent the most critical, gotta move this, critical and vulnerable phase of any real estate deal, often determining whether a transaction succeeds or fails. More deals collapse during the inspection period than at any other stage of the transaction. This is when buyers discover potential issues, sellers face unexpected repair requests, and emotions can run high for all parties involved. And this class will equip you with the knowledge and strategies to successfully guide your clients through inspections, turning this challenging phase into an opportunity to demonstrate your value as a real estate professional. I've got more people coming in the waiting room here. Jody and Skylar.
Hey, Linda.
And I will say that those are absolutely true
Can you hear me?
statements. At taking broker questions and questions from experienced agents and from new agents as well. That's one of the most common issues, is something that's happened during the inspection period or something that showed up at some point that was wrong about the property. So, all right. So it really truly is very important. The two things that we find that typically will cancel a contract because of the terms in the contract are the inspections and the loan. If the buyer has made the offer, the contract contingent upon their getting a loan to purchase the property. All right, so inspections, your role and the buyers. Do not try and be the expert about a house. Leave the experience to the expertise to the professional inspectors. So that's one of the things that I hear agents and again, experienced agents doing wrong all the time. And I will say the word wrong. We all need to learn to stay in our lane. And I've been doing this for 40 years, right? I still will not ever say to a client, oh, that crack in that foundation's not serious, or that is serious, right? If there is a crack in the foundation, what we say is, oh, you know what? It might be a concern. Let's bring it up to your whole house inspector, and you may possibly want to call in a structural engineer. So stay in your lane. Don't ever say that mold is a danger, that, oh, that's black mold. Oh my gosh, let's run out of here. So you don't know. Even if you think you don't know. So don't ever try to be the expert in the inspection portion of the contract. Your expertise, your only expertise, is getting a buyer and seller through the process of buying or selling a property. You know all the right people to call, but stay in your lane. Over on the right side, do not let your buyers buy a house without doing inspections. Always ensure proper inspections are completed.
Linda, can you hear me?
That's kind of one of those double-edged swords. We do have a document in our KW and KC Metro templates in dot loop. And this was kind of a thing that David talked about a couple of weeks ago in business meeting. We've always had the inspection advisory. I have always told all the new agents that I expect that to be in all buyers folders because it performs two purposes. It tells the buyer that we think that they should do inspections. They really should do inspections for their own protection. And it also lists out some of the more common inspections that we find would be beneficial in the contract process. And so, but we've also then added on a third page to that. That's always been a 2-page document. We've added on a third page to that actually lists some inspectors. The top of the list has our service providers, our in-house service providers, and you are more than welcome to add your own inspectors on there. Any that you've run across that you might recommend. Always, whether it's an inspector or a lender or a title company, you are always recommending more than one if you recommend any at all. But our service providers are listed at the top of that page. And those are the whole house inspectors. I don't think we've added any of the specialty inspectors there. So if you have an HVAC person, if you have a mold inspector, and I suggest that you find these people, but again, don't ever tell a buyer, hey, this is who you should use. Because that would just lead to problems, you know, if something should go awry later on and the buyer can say, oh, well, that's who you told me to use. And so then guess who's responsible for that? That would be us. Oh, 2 more people in the waiting room. It just Skylar again, just surprises me how quickly you all learned that realtor time is not anybody else's time either, right? 9:30 class means, oh, I can get there at 9:40. And realtors, realtors are notoriously late for everything, all right? Doesn't mean it's right, it just means that's what we do. I need you to go away. There we go. The presentation, doesn't Kristen email the? Oh, she told me she would. All right, let me see. So none of you have it? Oh, gosh. All right. Does anybody that's joining us online, let me know if any of you received the student manual for this? Give me just a
I
minute.
haven't seen it on
Probably,
Facebook.
but
Yeah, usually she posts on Facebook and it's not there.
take me a minute to get it downloaded and sent to all of you. Make sure it's the right thing. I know. So bear with me, everyone. Give me just a second. Okay, navigating inspections. Okay, I'm going to put this in my file and then I'll email it to all of you. Here, just give me a minute. Okay, and I'm gonna put everybody on the same just to save time. So I've got Jeff, Tyler, I may not have you in here. I don't. Tyler, what's your email address? Uh-huh. Say that again. VAR. How long ago was it you were in class with me? Yeah, wow, okay. Jocelyn. Okay, and then Skylar. Skylar. Caitlin, I may not have either. Caitlin, I don't have you.
Can you just do my first and last name, 12@gmail.com?
Mark, I might not have either.
I don't know. Can she hear me?
Mark. And Tamisha, I probably don't have you either. I don't. So some of you, what I need you all to do, those of you that I just said, so who was it? Caitlin, Hark, and Tamisha. I don't have you set up in my email account, so I need you to email me something. Just, hey, this is an introductory email. My email is contractscoach. And so I'll spell that out, it's plural, CONTRACTSCOACH at KWINKC.com. Oh, what are we doing?
Is it okay if we drop our email down in the chat?
Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, I'm probably not finished with it here yet. Hold on.
I'm not sure if she can hear us.
I don't think she can hear us. She may have us muted.
Yeah.
Too much. Okay, all right. Is that usually though, doesn't she usually email those out or provide a link or something for them? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, well, those, and we'll make sure that it is uploaded somewhere. Someone will make sure that that happens, so. But those of you that are participating, except for those that I said out loud, we don't need that one. Get back to the right spot here. All right, so after that little side trip there. All right, do not let your buyers rely on previous inspection reports. They cannot use the previous reports as if it were theirs during the inspection period or for a resolution, or if anything comes up later. One of the things about our seller's disclosure in our contract says that if the property has been inspected, that those in the last 12 months, that those inspection reports will be made available to the public now, so to any future prospective buyers. So it's wonderful information to have, and a buyer should look at that and make their offer based on that information, things that they already know. If the seller's done any repairs, we hope to have that information too, based upon those previous inspections. However, don't let a buyer say, oh, well, I've got this, why do I need to pay for my own? Yes, we all know that inspections it can be expensive. It's an expense, an investment for the buyer. They pay for that up front and then decide whether later on, whether they want to buy the house or not. It could be money. It's never money wasted. It's always money well spent. You're either finding out that there really isn't anything to be concerned about the property for the most part, or you're finding out that there is. It's always money well spent. Do not let them say, oh, well, I don't need to do it because we've got this other one. Two problems with that. Each inspector has a little bit different hot button, right? Some inspectors are, and they're all good. They're all good in the general sense, but one may have a little more expertise in foundation concerns. One may have a little more expertise in roof concerns. One may have a little more expertise in electrical or plumbing. So there's that. Secondly, if something should come up later, that buyer, after closing, that buyer has no recourse to the other buyer's inspector. They didn't pay for that inspection. They relied on it and shouldn't have. They only have recourse to their own inspector, the inspection that they paid for. So several different reasons. It's great information to have if we have a previous inspection report, but you don't let the buyer rely on that and not do their own inspections. I do want to jump back, so because I guess I did get interrupted in the middle of that. Up here on the top right hand here, do not let your buyer buy a house without doing inspections. Always ensure proper inspections are completed. We can't force anyone to do anything. All we can do, make sure that you have encouraged them to the best of your ability. And that's where our advisory, the 3-page advisory, inspection advisory document, and that's an internal form, encourages them, tells them that we think it's very important for them to have their inspections. So please, 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 we can't ensure that they're done, but we can encourage them to have them. All right, the inspections, your role in the buyer's agent responsibilities, make certain your buyers attend the inspections. If not, then schedule time for them to talk over the inspection report with the inspector via phone. You should not be the one interpreting the report.
Hey,
You
but
should
that-
absolutely be at the inspection. I think one of the next bullet points says that. You need to encourage that your buyers, if they can't be there for the entire time, I understand that is probably for most houses, regardless of the size of the property, the inspection's usually about a 2-hour process. And so if the buyer can't get away from work, because most of our inspections are done during business days or business hours during the day, some inspectors work on some Saturdays. But for the most part, the buyer may have to take time off work. And we understand if they can't do that for the entire inspection time. However, most inspectors will spend the last 20 minutes, half hour talking with the buyer about what they found, showing the photos, and going over the inspection reports, pointing out the serious concerns or major concerns that, as far as the inspector's eyes are concerned. And so the buyer should actually try to attend that if they can't be there for the whole thing. Second bullet point, you should attend the entire inspection so that when you are negotiating the items on the report, you can understand the issue and where it is in the house. When you are trying to interpret it for the listing agent or the other side of the transaction, you need to be able to say, well, here's where it was, under the staircase, or all of that kind of thing. The photos, most inspectors include photos in their inspection reports, but sometimes those are taken way out of proportion. And, the inspector knows what they're looking at, but we don't necessarily as we're looking at those photos. So you should be there. And if the buyer can't be there for the wrap up, you should be, and you should be listening and paying attention through all of that stuff. Bring food and drink for your buyers and the inspector. That's, as I said, it's a 2-hour, usually at least process. There may be more than one inspector there. We'll get to that too. So bringing bottles of water and, maybe stopping and getting some donuts if it's first thing in the morning, or maybe some granola bars or something for an afternoon, but that's just a nice thing to do, right? And bring a laser measurer. You should bring some kind of measuring tool. I have a laser measurer, but I don't always use it because it's real deep. You know, they're better than they used to be, but it's still dependent on, you know, whether it hits a window or, you know, that kind of thing. So, but bring a tape measure or a laser measurer. And the reason being, because this is also, and this is another reason for you, how you encourage, and I'm sure it shows up on here too. I did read through this the other day. This is a really great time for your buyers to take advantage of. This is their kind of free time in the house. Usually when you're showing the properties that, you know, what is that? Usually maybe 20 minutes, a half an hour that the buyers has spent in the house, making the decision, this is the house that they want to write a contract on. Now they have a couple of hours. They can go in and measure rooms for flooring. They can measure walls for furniture placement. They can see what kind of window treatments, you know, the size of the windows and what kind of window treatments they want. So this is their time for that. So that's why you need, you know, bring a notebook and some kind of measuring device, because they might not think of that. You should have those all the time when you're showing anyway, because those kinds of questions come up. All right. So measure furniture and appliances. There we go. Just talking about that. Buyers should measure any large furniture and appliances to ensure they will fit. So the buyer needs to know what the size is of the furniture they're moving in, not what's already there in the property. Document the property. Take pictures and videos of every room in the house. This may be their last time in the house for 30 to 45 days when they do their walkthrough right before closing. So again, they've only spent maybe half an hour at the most in the showings there. There may be questions, oh, you know, gosh, I don't remember what color the bathroom in the basement was. So going through, taking their own photos of that kind of thing, just to help them remember for future planning on what they're bringing to the house and that kind of thing. Bring design samples. That's it. This would be their time to bring in paint chips. Again, anything that this is their time. We hope kind of uninterrupted. Very occasionally, there will be a seller in attendance at the buyer's inspections. We really try to not let that happen. Excuse me. We should try to dissuade sellers from being there in inspections for all kinds of different reasons, but partly because it is the buyer's time to be there and spend time there. This is when your buyer should fall deeper in love with the house. 99% of the time, that's what happens. The other 1% is the buyer's thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do here? I don't remember this. Oh, I don't remember that. All right, and give space to the inspector. You or the buyers should not follow the inspector around the house. That will make their inspections take twice as long. I actually do know, though, of one inspector that kind of encourages the buyer to walk around with them. So just ask the inspector, but most inspectors would rather go about their business and get and take all of their notes. Don't be not be distracted as they are looking at things, and then do their wrap up at the end. So just to check with your inspector on that. Most common inspections items in Kansas City. So we'll start at the top right over here, wood rot. Just about every house in Kansas City has wood rot, even if it has some kind of siding attached to it, a vinyl or metal siding. There's still going to be wood rot around doors and around windows. Very common problem. I'm not saying that it's nothing to be concerned about. I'm just saying it shows up on almost every inspection report that there is wood rot. Wood rot is deterioration of wood rot due to weather conditions, moisture and rain, and then fungus growing. Foundation issues, because we have very expansive soil here in Kansas City. It's very clay based. So when we have dry weather, our soil shrinks. And when we have moist weather, our soil expands. That, of course, is going to take a toll on a foundation. Regardless of what kind of foundation it is, whether it's concrete or block or well, those are two big ones. So so the cracks and settling, very common here in Kansas City. Again, it is not your expertise to tell a buyer that, oh, that crack's nothing to worry about, or you know, that, and not just in foundations. That's also when you're walking through the property, seeing a crack above a window or doorway. Right? Oh, well, that might be a concern. Let's make sure to point it out to the inspector. Radon. Here in the Midwest, we do have radon. I hope everyone understands what radon is. You should have learned that in your pre-license class, and I know for some of you that was a long time ago, but it's a colorless, odorless, lighter than air radioactive gas. That is a product of deterioration underneath the rock shelf that we have here in Kansas City. And when that rock shelf under our soil cracks and opens, that allows that radon gas to escape. Ends up in our properties, and it is a carcinogen. It is a known carcinogen. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer, right behind smoking. So it is an issue. It is a concern. It is dealt with in our contract. So that's a very common test. Again, $100 is a big bad bunch of money, but testing for radon is a $100, can be done at this. It's a 48-hour electronic monitor that's left in the property. Some inspectors want to have that installed before the day of the inspection, so that they can get the readings on the day of inspection. Some inspectors will drop off that monitor on the day of inspection and then go back and pick it up 48 hours later. But again, I think it's money well spent. Drainage issues, problems with water flow around the property. Again, I know one of the things that leads to our foundation problems when the soil has contracted and now there's a space between the soil and the foundation, perfect place for rainwater to get in. Water is a very, very, very powerful force and has a direct effect can put a lot of pressure on the foundation walls. So water intruding into the basement, major problem here in Kansas City. I don't care how well a property is maintained, it can be a problem. There are certain things that can be done that can minimize the water coming close to the foundation, but a lot of people in Kansas City don't bother to do that either. And of course, termites. There are 2 guarantees in life when we're talking about properties. Concrete is going to crack and every house is going to be subject to termites. They're a fact of life. There are ways that we can deter them from doing damage to the property, but they are always around. So those are some of our biggest concerns here in Kansas City. Our real estate contract and inspection. So our inspection period starts. So paragraph 13 of our contract is one of the longest paragraphs in our contract. And it is about the inspections, what can be inspected, the rights and responsibilities of the buyer, the time period that we are allowing for the buyer to do their inspections. But then it also deals with all of the subsequent things that we're going to be talking about here. Please, 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 I want all of you know that I really stress that you are familiar with the contract. Please, please, please be very familiar with paragraph 13 so that you know how all of this works. Again, I'm happy to answer questions. Your coaches are happy to answer questions about it, but this is one of those things because we deal with it so much. It really behooves you to be familiar with what the contract says. So our inspection period starts. There is a line a blank in the contract that says that the buyer has blank number of days in which to do their inspections, and that is called our inspection period. The default in our contract is 10 days for that. You can negotiate anything that the 2 parties agree to, the buyer and seller agree to there. I prefer to have a little more than 10 days. I would always ask for 12 or 14, almost always. There are certainly times when you might want to shorten that time period when you are trying to, when you know you're in a competitive situation with other buyers. That might be if the buyer can't really offer any more money or can't provide an appraisal waiver. But that's maybe one way that they could strengthen their offer in competition with other offers to say, well, I'll have all of my inspections done within 7 days. All right. Before you shorten that time period though, make sure you're checking with the inspectors. And the reason that I like to add a few more days onto it whenever possible is because you have your whole house inspector and your whole house inspector. Thanks. Through the whole time? Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on just a minute. Let's see if we can figure this out. Sorry. No, that's all right. I'm hearing something. So what should I do? Oh, Sam, yeah, I got all kinds of chats in there too. Probably all telling me they can't. Oh, so no, some of them were emails. That it? Would that have been it? And do what? Okay, no, okay, so I see that happening. Okay. Yeah, that should be good. All right, who wasn't able to hear before? Oh. Caitlin, is it cutting out for anyone else or is it me? All right, so I'm going to ask you all to answer me now. Can you hear me now? And I'll make sure that I send
Yes, I
that
can hear you.
Oh, I didn't send the email. Well, there you go. That's why you all didn't get it. All right. No, I'm glad you did. Was everyone else having trouble hearing me too?
I could hear you just fine.
Well,
We
we
just
could hear you. You couldn't hear us.
Okay. All right, well, I think we got that all fixed. All right, thank you all. Okay,
another color's
now you all should have received the email. Okay, back to sharing. Fun times with Linda. All right, always take, you know, everyone here knows that I have technology problems, right? All right, that shouldn't surprise anybody. All right, so our inspection period. All right, so we've established the inspection period. Oh, the reason that I like to always add a day or two, a few days more is because we have our whole house inspection, and that's exactly what it is. It is a general inspection. And quite often what the whole house inspector will say is, there seems to be some weak or damaged places on the roof. I recommend, as the whole house inspector, I recommend you have a roofing expert come out and look at it. The HVAC system doesn't seem to be working properly. I recommend you have an HVAC specialist come out. Well, two ways that we can negotiate that is, number one, have our buyer have the HVAC inspector come out, or that roof inspector come out, or we can ask for the seller to do it. I really like to have the buyer do that. Of course, sometimes that's an additional expense, but you would have to warn them about that and kind of prepare them. But chances are now you're going to have to wait another at least day or two for that secondary inspector to come out. So that's why I like to add a few days on. So, but let's talk about the inspections period starting. When does it start? Once we have a signed contract, let's say that we get our last signature on a contract today on May 15th. Our inspection period starts at midnight tonight. May 16th is our first day of the inspection period. And let's assume it's a 10-day inspection period. We then have 10 days starting on the 16th. Right? And don't be afraid to count those out on your fingers. Don't be afraid to count those out on a calendar. And make a note to yourself somewhere. And again, I'm a paper person, so this is always on the outside of my folder for people, is when my inspection period ends. That is a critical date for you to keep track of. All right. Number two, the inspection paragraph. How long for the inspection period depends. The contract defaults to 10 days. We already talked about that. And inspection requirements. The inspections must be done in the inspection period. They must be done at the buyer's expense by an independent qualified inspector. Uncle Joe with his flashlight and screwdriver is not an independent qualified inspector. Uncle Joe is welcome to come over, during the inspection period. Again, try not to let him interfere with what the actual inspector is doing. And we can listen to what Uncle Joe has to say about the condition of the property. We can't use Uncle Joe's opinion for repairs. Right? We have to make for repairs or for any renegotiation, which we're going to be getting to, we have to make sure that those are per the inspection report, written inspection report of a qualified inspector. What makes a qualified inspector? Neither Kansas nor Missouri require inspectors to be licensed. But there are several different professional organizations that monitor that an inspector can join after they've met certain requirements, a certain number of inspections that they've done, being as a what's the word? What I just lost my word. As an apprentice. So in conjunction with another qualified inspector, and they have to pass tests and all that kind of thing, just like you all do, but they're not licensed. But those are the requirements for them to join these professional organizations. ASHI, NACI, and there's one other one that I can never remember when I'm trying to do this. So just to make sure that your inspector, that the inspectors on your list, the inspectors, plural, that you are giving out to your buyers and sellers, we'll talk about that here in a few minutes too, are have a membership in one of those, at least one of those professional organizations. It's kind of an oversight, just like our National Association of Realtors is for us. And so buyers paying for all of the inspections. They do usually have to pay for the inspections at the time of the inspection. Most inspectors will not defer payment on that until closing. However, the cost of the inspections is a reimbursable expense. It is something that if we've asked the seller to pay any of the buyer's closing costs, the inspection cost is part of that. So it can be reimbursed if the seller is paying for some of the buyer's closing costs. I'll try to keep a better eye on my chat too, so that I can pay attention to you all. I will get everyone a copy of that I wasn't able to email before, that if you sent me your email address, but I really prefer for you to email me so that I have that. It's a lot easier for me, right? That's what it's all about, right? All right, a real estate contract still, property insurability. Buyers should be contacting their insurance agent during the inspection period to determine the house is insurable. And before I move on from that, this is really our due diligence clause. This is our due diligence period. And whatever it is that you've negotiated between the buyer and the seller, again, we'll stick with the default 10 days. Our contract specifically says insurance, and it also says this is our due diligence. This is the time period in which the seller is determining that with your help, that they are the ones that are doing it for their own satisfaction, whether the zoning allows them to do with the property what they want to do, whether the HOA restrictions are restrictions with which they can live. And this came up, and I absolutely 100% agree with this. This is an actual situation that came up a couple of weeks ago during the inspection period. And yes, the buyer had seen the house before, but during the inspection period, during the inspections, actually, the house backed up to a relatively busy street. And the buyers on that day determined that noise level was too high for their autistic child. All right. I think that is a very valid due diligence decision to have made. So they wanted to cancel the contract based on that. All right. Due diligence is this property going to fulfill every need the needs that I have as far as those, most typically we're thinking about zoning or HOA, the insurability. All right. Insurability will also determine whether the buyer can get the loan. So that's really important right now. Not only, so contacting their insurance, the buyer's insurance agent, is very important because that's when they can get their quote for the property. The insurance agent has information that reflects any claim that has ever been made on that property. And I will tell you right now, if there has been a water claim, meaning if there was a burst pipe and, water flooded the kitchen or flooded the basement, a finished basement, insurance companies kind of have problems with that because that can lead to a mold issue that has not yet been discovered. So it's not just how much the insurance is, it's whether or not they're going to be able to get insurance on that property. So very important to take advantage of the due diligence. Factors affecting inspections. Inspectors may not be able to inspect every aspect of the property due to access or weather. The septic system, check with the county about septic inspection requirements. Use the residential septic. It's not called the septic system addendum anymore. It's called the wastewater or the waste system addendum. So if you're looking for that, two really important things. During the winter, we can't test air conditioners. The temperature has to be above 70 or above 60 degrees for a certain number of hours. So otherwise we're going to damage the compressor. We can't test swimming pool equipment or any outside water equipment on the property. During winter, we have a cold weather waiver specifically for that. If there's snow on the roof or if it's raining or during the inspection time, while the inspector's there, they're not going to be able to get up on the roof. A lot of inspectors actually do get up on the roof. Some don't. Some will just get up on the ladder and use binoculars to look. But if it's snow covered, nobody can see anything. So there are certain things that we are not going to be able to tell because of weather conditions. The septic system, the wastewater system there, I know that Johnson County, Kansas requires the county to participate in the septic inspection. What they're doing is doing a perk test, making sure that the lateral lines are working properly. I'm not sure about any other county, and those things can change at any moment. But I also the warning too, don't assume just because a property is within a city, within city boundaries, that it's not on a septic system, because we're surprised every day by properties that have not connected to a city sewer system. So always check on that. The septic inspection should absolutely be done during the same time period. There are a lot of decisions to be made on that. Who's going to pay for the location of the septic tank, if it's a tank? Who's going to pay for the uncovering of it? Who's going to pay for the pumping of it, cleaning out, because the inspector's only going to inspect a septic tank if it's been pumped out. So lots of decision, lots of negotiating. Those are all negotiable terms. And access to the property. Seller must provide reasonable access. Well, I don't know why that's in there, blocked water and sewer lines in there. I'm not sure what that is. We are given that our contract says that the seller within that 10-day time frame, that or whatever we've negotiated for the inspection period, that they have to give us reasonable access. What is reasonable access? Access during daylight hours. Don't expect to be able to go look at the property after 9 o'clock at night, or really no inspector is going to be working after 8 o'clock at night. There might be some that will show up later in the day. They are supposed to give us access. I've had sellers kind of kick back on that. And I'm going to even, let me rephrase that. I've had listing agents kind of saying, well, no, you can't come out. You can't send we won't allow your roof inspector out there. And I really do think that it was the listing agent that was saying that in that situation. I don't think the seller even knew what was going on. So, but that's not allowed. We are to be given reasonable access for reasonable inspections. All right, damage and repairs. Buyer's responsible and will pay for any damage anything that happens during the inspection itself. Can things break? Absolutely. Right. So I know Mike that does the CE class has told, I don't know if he tells it every time he teaches the class, but he's told the story about, as the inspector, right, he walked out into the garage, he's going to test the garage door, the electric garage door opener. And so he presses the button on the wall and the garage door, I mean, it doesn't come down or go up, it falls into the garage, right? So Is the buyer responsible for that? Well, maybe. I mean, that's that would be one of those gray areas that happened during the inspection. Was it anything that the inspector did? No. I mean, inspectors know how to press those buttons, the proper way. So that would be one of those gray areas. I've never asked him how that all turned out or if he even knows, but if the inspector does some damage, what inspectors will do when they're testing for wood rot is they will take their screwdriver and kind of poke around on a window or around a door. And if they cause a major hole there, is that a problem? Of course it is, right? So little pinpoint holes should probably be repaired, and it really is up to the buyer. But if anything that is a damage done because of the inspections, the buyer is responsible for. Still dealing with how our real estate contract works with all of this stuff. Quality of repair, seller agrees to, so this is what is said in our contract before we even get to negotiating anything. Deals with the quality of repairs. Seller agrees to complete any repairs that the buyer is requesting and the seller agrees to do in a workmanlike manner with good quality materials. We'll get to a little further on that here pretty soon. Our contract says regarding wood destroying insects that the seller agrees to have the property treated if inspection reveals issues or if the inspector otherwise recommends treatment for wood destroying insects. Our contract says that the seller is responsible for the treatment, not necessarily for, or it doesn't say, it says not for any damage that the termites did, any structural damage, but responsible for the treatment. And I hope that everyone in here is aware that if you include an in its present condition, and we'll talk more about that too, that remove and any of the boxes, 1, 2, or 3, that removes the seller's responsibility to do that. Paragraphs 1 and 2, boxes 1 and 2 on the IAPC state that the seller is not responsible for any repairs or treatments. And so it takes away that seller's responsibility. And the inspection requirements. FHA VA loans require wood destroying insect or termite inspections. They will require that. So and actually FHA and VA and USDA should be included in that as well. Encourage the buyer to have whole house inspections done, just as we do. So even if no other inspections are done, they do require that wood destroying insect. That is the one exception too. I said the whole house inspectors are not licensed in either Kansas or Missouri. You have to be a licensed wood destroying insect inspector to do the termite inspection, to have their report. Seller agrees on the contract to have property treated if a written inspection report of certified pest inspector reveals evidence of active infestation. So they're saying, yes, these are live tubes or for termites or any other activity by a wood destroying insect, or evidence of past untreated infestation. They may say, well, I see some tubes. I don't see any live termites, but I also don't see any evidence that the property's been treated before. And there is evidence of prior treatments. The evidence of prior treatments are the drill marks and concrete on the driveway or front porch or back porch. And they have a couple of other ways of telling too, but those are the most obvious to us. And so if they can't find any evidence of a previous treatment, and even if there's no live activity, if they find any evidence of any activity, they'll recommend or otherwise recommend. There are times in which the inspector might not see any of that, but is suspicious. There might be some loose wood that's too close to the house that's been lying on the ground and maybe see termites there. So they might recommend a treatment even if they don't see any live infestation. Excuse me, allergies. All right, now, what if, so our contract says, what if the buyer doesn't conduct any inspections? If the buyer doesn't take advantage of their inspection period, they waive their right to cancel or renegotiate anything on the contract. That ability for them is completely removed if they don't do inspections. One of the really important reasons why they should do inspections. What is considered an unacceptable condition per our contract here, our KCRAR contract? What's an unacceptable condition? Any condition identified in a written inspection report prepared by an independent qualified inspector. So that can be anything. Our contract says that a buyer has the right to cancel the contract, can cancel the contract. Their earnest deposit is subject to paragraph 22 in our contract. Don't ever tell a buyer, please, that, oh, you can cancel the contract if you find something unacceptable and you will get your earnest deposit back. The expectation is that they will get their earnest deposit back, but as everyone knows, all parties have to sign the release of that. And some sellers do get pretty obstinate about that. So what's an unacceptable condition? Anything that's on the report that the buyer wants to use, right? Most of the time we're dealing with big ticket items, foundations, roof, HVAC systems, that kind of thing. But if a buyer's gotten cold feet otherwise, it can be anything that they find on the inspection report. It can be a double lugging in the electrical box, so doesn't matter. Okay, no timely notice. What if the buyer does not give timely notice of unacceptable conditions? So let's talk about all of that. In our 10-day period, not only does the buyer have to do all of their inspections, they also, within that 10-day period, if they're going to offer to renegotiate or ask the seller to do any repairs, or they want to cancel the contract, all of that has to be done within our 10-day inspection period or whatever has been agreed to by both parties. We have to let the seller know what the buyer's planning on doing within that inspection period. So what if they don't? What if they wait until the 11th day there? Again, buyer waives their right to cancel or renegotiate the contract. That's why it's always on the outside of my folder when my inspection period ends. I do not want anything to happen after that inspection period. Make sure that you are working within that. All right, so what if buyer's inspections reveal unacceptable conditions? The buyer has three options at that point. Once they've received their reports back and are making their decision. Number one, they can accept the property in its present condition. They say, oh, nothing showed up on here that I can't handle, or that was a surprise that we didn't see. You know, and part of that is, you know, welcome to home ownership, right? Or they can cancel the contract. If they don't, if something scares them so bad, I don't even want to deal with it. A lot of buyers that aren't familiar with what happens here in Kansas City, if any kind of foundation issue. Oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with the foundation issue. Well, okay, but any property you're looking at here in Kansas City, it either has had or probably will have. But it, you know, but again, a buyer's choice on that, so they can cancel the contract or they can offer to renegotiate. We can renegotiate either repairs or financial concessions, and we'll get to that here too. So the three options that the buyer has within that 10-day or whatever is negotiated inspection period. All right, so our inspection period ends one of two ways. Either by the time that's been established, if you go through the end of the 10 days before you're doing it, if you're doing whatever you're doing with the seller on the 10th day, that our inspection period will expire at midnight of that 10th day. It will also expire or actually terminate when the buyer sends the inspection notice, a resolution, or a cancellation. Any one of those three things, the inspection notice absolutely will terminate our contract. And if you're sending a resolution, yes, if you're sending a resolution, you have to be sending the inspection notice also. So it's the inspection notice that terminates our inspection period. Or if the buyer has decided that they don't want to pursue the property, they want to cancel, that will terminate our 10-day inspection period or whatever is agreed upon. Even if all of that happens on the 3rd day, now we no longer have an inspection period. But then if our buyer does then, if we send over an inspection notice and a resolution, that begins then our 5-day renegotiation period. And that's what we call it, the renegotiation period. Again, the 5-day, even though it says 5-day on here, that also is a blank in the contract that can be changed. The default is 5 days. And most of the time, that's what most agents stick with. I would suggest to you that no reason not to add a day or two onto that too, just like you did possibly on the inspection period. Ask for 7 days, because 5 days, now our 5-day negotiation period. So let's, and that timing works just like our inspection period does. If we send over the inspection notice and the resolution today on May 15th, ends our inspection period, and at midnight tonight is when our renegotiation period starts. So the 5-day, and we'll go with that one just because it is the default, 5-day renegotiation period. We're asking the seller to do some things, either repairs or a financial concession of sorts. That 5 days, a lot can happen. So we just send over requests for repairs over there. We want a new roof. We want an electrician to come out and do some work on the electrical box. And there are some plumbing issues also. We want the seller to do all of that. Well, the seller may be agreeable to some of that or all of that, but first they're probably going to want to get some bids, some estimates for the work. And if they're thinking, well, yeah, I'll spend up to $5,000 for everything. And then, you know, the roof repairs come back at $5,000. And so then everything else is going to be over and above that. So we need to allow the seller some time to get their estimates. Buyers can be getting their estimates also during this period of time. I think that's a good idea. So what if the seller doesn't agree to do the electrical work, but does agree to other things? Buyer, you need to have an idea of how much that electrical work would cost you. See if, again, you want to continue on with the negotiations or not. So a lot of things to be done in here. I can't tell you how many times it happens that the 5 days is not enough. We're here on the 5th day. People are negotiating in good faith. We need some more time. Can we extend that? Of course we can, with an amendment. And I suggest heartily that you do an amendment if you are still negotiating on the 5th day, that we're going to extend that. But it happens so often that 5 days is not enough. So don't have any chats there. All right, so the 3 possible outcomes at the end of our renegotiation period. We can have an acceptance by all parties. We can continue negotiations. But 3, I didn't do those in the right order. So number 1, if we send our resolution of unacceptable conditions over, asking the seller to do the roof repairs, electrical work, and plumbing work, the seller can agree to that. And if it's done anytime within that 5-day period, with that now our renegotiation period is ended and we have a contract, or our contract continues. The seller can say, no, I'm not going to do the electrical. I will do the roof repairs and I'll do the plumbing repairs. That's a counter offer back to our buyer. Now our buyer has the 3 options. I'm going to accept, reject, or counter offer, right? So an agreement, all parties may agree on the first round, or we can have a renegotiation, or we have a renegotiation that is then accepted. Our inspection period ends when you submit the inspection report, and notice we've already said that. Must submit all of the applicable written inspection reports in their entirety. If we are going to be asking the seller to do any repairs or to make any financial concessions to us based upon the inspections, we have to send the inspection reports along with our request. All of the applicable. And here's why, a couple of reasons why. Number 1, the seller has every right to understand why you're asking for these repairs to be made, what the repairs are, and what you may be expecting of them. Secondly, if we don't get to any agreement here on this, the seller is under the obligation to provide any inspection reports now to any future prospective buyers. That's part of our seller's disclosure and therefore part of our contract as well. So a couple of reasons. So you are sending all of the inspection reports along with any requests that you make, whether you're asking them to do repairs or whether you're canceling, either one. All right, repairs, renegotiation, or canceling. And then the only three things that can happen during the renegotiation period: seller agrees to everything and signs the resolution. We've already kind of talked about this. It binds all parties now. We have a binding contract. Buyer and seller renegotiate and come to an agreement other than what the buyer originally offered. Or buyer signs the resolution and agrees to take the property in its present condition. This binds the seller. This is the just kidding box. So let's talk about that for a minute, because this is another one of those very common questions that even very experienced agents call and ask me about. So our 5-day renegotiation period. A lot can happen in there. We make our request. The buyer sends the request to the seller, saying, I want you to do the roof, the electrical, and the plumbing. We don't hear anything from the seller, from the listing agent during that 5-day period. We're calling them. You should call them immediately to make sure they've received it. Maybe call them the second day and saying, hey, what's going on? What are your sellers thinking? And if they're talking with you, we probably don't have a major concern. It's when you're hearing nothing back, especially if the listing agent is not returning your phone calls, not responding to your texts. This is a really good indication that what the seller's trying to, because, and here I call this a game, and I do think that it's a game. What a lot of agents and sellers do, and then, agents will do it. They say that's what the seller wants to do, but it's really what the agent wants to do. What the agent has told the seller to do is, we're going to wait this out. We have a backup offer, and our backup offer is much better than our original offer. Right? And this is the listing agent talking to the seller. So that backup offer, and that backup offer has box number 3 on the IIPC. So we are going to just wait out. We're not going to renegotiate with this buyer. We're just going to wait it out. And at the end of that 5-day inspection period, the seller is the one that can cancel if we haven't reached a negotiation. Has to happen after the end of the 5-day renegotiation period. So that's a game that a lot of agents like to play. I do call it a game, and I call it a dirty game, actually, because what I think should happen on the ethical side of things is, maybe that seller does have a great backup offer, more power to them. I think that should be something that's communicated to our buyer, right? The one that's making the request, and just say up front. You don't even have to tell them, because there's no obligation for us to know that there's a backup offer. But just come back and say, the seller's not going to be doing anything, right? Seller is not going to do anything. Well, okay, right now the buyer has a choice to make. So at the end of our 5-day period, we can continue to renegotiate if we haven't reached an agreement. Or on that 5th day, even if it comes down to 11:59 of that 5th day, 11:59 p.m., we have a signed agreement, then we move on. At the end of that, though, at midnight, at the end of that 5th day, either party can cancel, right? The buyer can say, oh, I'm done dealing with you, I'm moving on. The seller can send a cancellation notice, right? If we have gotten the indication that the seller's not going to negotiate with us, our buyer can, and this is the tricky part of this, the just kidding box, and something that a lot of experienced agents don't know and don't understand. Before the end of that 5-day renegotiation period, our buyer can decide, okay, never mind, the just kidding, forget all of those requests I made. I will accept the property as is. On the resolution, our resolution of unacceptable conditions is a 2-page document. At the very bottom of that 2nd page is that box. And that's what the buyer is saying. I know I made requests, forget those. I will accept the property today as is. Not expecting you to do anything. When the buyer signs that, we now have a binding agreement. The seller does not have to sign that. and the seller is obligated to meet their obligations of the original contract, right? Sellers don't like that, but if they're gonna play that game of waiting when it gets to be 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. on our 5th day, and we haven't heard anything from the seller, or we do know that the seller is not going to do anything, the buyer can sign that and we still have a contract. Everybody kind of understand that? All right, still don't have any questions showing up here. We have a distinguished guest here with us now. Hey,
Sometimes when that cancellation, sometimes the buyer can cancel. And sometimes the game of chicken can go in your favor, sometimes, not always. And the seller comes back and say, you know what? Because sometimes they didn't have, that backup offer pulled out.
Sure, absolutely, right. Yes, if the seller says we're not doing anything, I'm not sure that I would have my buyer agree to that on that second day. I would wait that out a little bit. Oh yeah, I just had a call this morning from an agent who had a buyer that was in first position as a backup offer, and the first one fell through, and now the buyer's having second thoughts, right? And so at that time, yeah, that backup offer may go away at any point in there. So I'm not sure I'd have, and that's what Angel said. I'm sure you all didn't hear that on here, but Angel said, yeah, that, sometimes it is a game of chicken both ways. Sometimes it works out for the buyer a little bit too. So, okay, all right. So those are our 3 options there. All right, still dealing with our real estate contract. This is not working out well for me here. I don't know where to put this. Over here. All right. All right, at the end of our 5-day period, no agreement reached. If no agreement is reached, then on that day, on day 5 or whatever the mutually agreed upon date is, either party may cancel the contract in writing, so sending that cancellation notice, or the negotiations may continue. So be careful, there could be backup offer. We've already dealt with that. Recommended action, send an amendment to extend the renegotiation period. I think I hit on that. If we are actually negotiating, and if everybody's negotiating in good faith, please do use an amendment to extend our negotiation period. Extend it for a couple of more days. Because again, once we have an agreement, that day, our renegotiation period will end anyway. So extend it for whatever you think is necessary. Recommend that the buyer agrees to take the house in its present condition. Once again, I'm not sure that I would say is our recommendation that they do it, right? We are just telling them what their options are at the end of that 5-day period. Folks, if you don't want to buy the house, if these repairs aren't made, then we will cancel. If you are okay with accepting the house, if these repairs aren't made, then we will sign that just kidding box. All right, inspection repairs. Excuse me. Zeros. Seller repairs, bad deals, bad idea. Common after closing issue equals lawsuits. All right. Seller repairs, that just I'm not making this real clear here. Or 100% better alternative is to request a credit toward closing costs if not already covered, or reduction of price of property. So here's what Kristen's trying to say here, because Kristen's the one that puts these things together for us. Asking for repairs, for the seller to do repairs, is not necessarily the best thing, unless it is a very cut and dried thing. The one thing that I would ask the seller to do is, if it comes up, is to install a radon mitigation fan, because that's a pretty cut and dry, right? Has to go in, in certain places in the house. And then in our request, we can say, and we want the property retested after that's installed to make sure that the radon level has been brought down to below the EPA recommended guideline. Anything else, though, is really subject to interpretation. When the buyer says, I want the seller to fix the ledger board under the deck, seller has to tear up some stuff to do that. The repairs that are made to do that aren't exactly then what the deck looked like before. Another one of the things that's really pretty cut and dried is our electrical repairs. So, you know, again, it's still best. I'm not saying anything that the slide's not saying, but unless it's really cut and dried. So when the buyer then, so if we ask the seller to do some repairs, then the day before closing, we go in for a final walkthrough and we're looking at the repair, or we have the inspector come back out and investigate the repair, or another expert come out and investigate the repair. And they say, well, no, this isn't right. Or, well, what this serves the purpose. It's not what we were asking for. Buyers can be very surprised and say, oh, well, that's not what I had envisioned. That's not what I meant. All right. But it fit the bill, right? The seller did what we asked them to. So I've got a cheat sheet on the resolution here. And so if you are going to ask for repairs, we need to be as specific as we possibly can without being too specific, right? And if you're going to ask for any repairs to be done, roof repairs, you're going to ask for it to be done by a qualified professional contractor and provide receipts for the work, any work that was done. And we'll talk about the reasons for that too. But for the most part, and what this slide is telling us here, for the most part, it is much better if the buyer's in a position to do this, to ask for a credit to their closing costs, that the seller will pay some of their closing costs at the closing table. Number one, that saves some buyers some of the money that they were going to bring to the closing table so that they could do their own repairs. That's best. Now we have to be careful. If we've already asked for closing costs in the original contract and the seller's already obligated to some, every loan product has a cap on it, how much the seller can contribute to the buyer's closing costs. Make sure that you're talking with the lender and that it's okay with the lender if you're asking for additional money at closing. That your buyer's not getting close to that cap or going over that cap. Second best and would be, let's say it's a cash buyer and they're not getting a loan, so they can't ask for really much in closing costs, a reduction in the sales price. For a buyer that's getting a loan, a reduction in the sales price doesn't help them a whole lot. It doesn't put money in their pocket as the seller paid closing costs would, and it might reduce their monthly payment by a few dollars every month. So not a huge benefit to a buyer that's getting a loan, but for a buyer that's paying cash, that would be just as good, right? So that is money out of their pocket. So better alternatives are asking for financial concessions. There are some exceptions to that, as I said, and each buyer's, and we can't force a buyer to do anything, but be sure that you're telling them the pitfalls of asking for specific repairs. Usually better to ask for cash at closing or an adjustment in the sale price of the property. So recommended repairs. If the inspector points out an issue and it's in the inspection report, that's a recommended repair. Most inspectors, you probably might have talked about this on Tuesday. Most inspectors have different categories in their reports. They'll give your whole house report, and then we'll have a summary and say, these are things that are of an important issue, or these are things that need to be monitored, and these are things that all checked out okay. So recommended repairs, anything that the inspector has in their category, or they may not have it split out into categories. They'll just mark it on each section in the report. But anything that the inspector says needs to be addressed. Prospective repairs, items that may need attention in the future, those things to be monitored. A code inspection. Our whole house inspection is not a code inspection. There are some safety issues that an inspector will point out, and they will say, this doesn't meet current code. It met code when the property was built, but codes have changed since then. That isn't necessarily, anything that would be a red flag, right? But it could be, but not necessarily. So make sure that you're understanding what the inspector is saying about those specific things. If it's something about the safety of the deck, you know, that the ledger board wasn't installed properly, that is a safety issue, and that's a huge thing. If it's something about a GFCI outlet that's not present in the bathroom and the property was built in 1968, there wasn't code back then, right? So should we ask the seller for that? I don't know, we'll get to that here pretty soon too. Old house versus new home, the condition of the house, is the condition of the house what you would expect for the age of the house? You can't expect that property built in 1968 to be in pristine condition as you would hope that newly constructed property would be. And then new construction is its own animal anyway, but absolutely, yes, your buyer should have a whole house inspector come look at even new construction. There are some inspectors that you can have come out during the construction process. And they'll check, you know, once the plumbing's done and once the electrical's done. And not a bad idea out there, folks, right? So, not that you don't trust the builder, but, you know, things happen, right? Things happen. But then absolutely in new construction, I would have a whole house inspector come out and give a whole house inspection. So nothing there. So inspection repairs, best practice to ask for money towards closing costs or reduction of purchase price. However, if requesting for repairs is to be done, number one, require in the resolution that all repairs will be completed no later than 5 days prior to closing. We don't want those repairs to be done the day before closing. We want to be able to check out those repairs. The contract truly allows for us to do that at any point, but certainly on our final walkthrough. So, and we want to also be able to ask, as this will point out here too, ask our inspector to come out and re-inspect the repairs, or ask a specialist, an expert in that field to come out and check on those repairs. So we want that done in plenty of time, in case it is one of those situations where it wasn't done properly, or my goodness, the buyer says this wasn't what I was expecting at all. Require the sellers to provide buyers with a paid receipt from the contractor doing any repairs, also no later than 5 days prior to closing. This is, Jeff, a lender requirement usually and a title company requirement. And it's valid because neither one of those parties want a repair to show up as a mechanic's lien on the property. That's going to affect their interest in the property later on. So in our request, we are always asking for paid invoices. So, yep. How's that going, by the way? Okay, good. All right. And buyers should have repairs reviewed either by the home inspector or a specialist. You know, if it's something that they can visually see, if it was repair of of nail holes or something like that, obviously you don't have to have a painter come out. But if it was an electrical repair, a plumbing repair, HVAC repair, roof repair, have someone other than the contractor that did the work come out and look at it. Oh, almost out of time. See, Linda just loves to talk. We're not going to get through it all here. FHA or VA loans. The appraisal process on an FHA and VA is different than the appraisal process on a conventional loan. There will be inspections regardless, and inspections regardless of what kind of loan the buyer's getting. You're going to have your whole house inspection. An FHA, VA, or USDA appraiser is going to come out giving their estimate of value for the property, but also looking at some of the same things that the inspector's looking at. FHA, VA appraiser is going to be looking at cracked sidewalk, driveway, patio, that kind of thing, a tripping hazard or something that's going to hurt the structural integrity of the property. Or there's actually a whole booklet of things that those specialists, the special appraisers, are looking for. And each one's going to have their own different hot buttons. Most of them more common violations that we see, they're not really violations, but most of the most common issues that we see are lack of downspouts or splash blocks on the guttering system, lack of handrails on any set of steps that is more than 3 steps, Some inspect, all FHA, VA and USDA inspectors will, if they don't go up into the attic to check on things, they will at least stick their head up there and take photographs. So they're looking to make sure that there aren't any structural issues in the attic, or any major fire hazards in the attic. Each one's going to be a little bit different, so we can't say that all FHA inspections will provide this. But if the FHA, VA or USDA appraisal comes back with requirements, then those repairs have to be done before the loan will be approved. There's no longer any rule about who has to do the repairs. Seller or buyer can pay for the repairs, but my suggestion is don't have the buyer pay for a repair on a property they don't own yet. Anything can happen, you know, in between that repair and closing date. So always ask for the seller to repair on an FHA, VA or USDA. Value of pre-listing inspections. Most of the time, as we've talked about here this morning, we're talking about it from the buyer's perspective, but getting a pre-listing inspection done can be a full-blown whole house inspection. But if you tell the inspector, hey, this is a pre-listing, we just kind of want to check out the major big surprises that might show up for us. So they'll check the roof, they'll check the HVAC system, they'll do they'll look at the electrical box behind the panel, and they'll check the plumbing, right? And check general things about the foundation. They're not going to go through and check all of the outlets, you know, like the whole house inspector would. It's very beneficial for two reasons. Number one, it can minimize the surprises that a seller might have from the buyer's inspection, saying, well, I didn't think there was any problem with my 20-year-old HVAC system, right? Seems to be working for me, but so it might minimize those surprises. It can, it's information that we can give to a buyer. And because if we have those inspection reports, then they should be made available to all prospective buyers. And so, good information, a buyer can make a good solid offer based upon what they're seeing in the pre-inspection report. And then also it strengthens a seller providing the in its present condition form up front. It really kind of scares me when a seller provides an in its present condition already filled out, expecting the buyer to. It all becomes negotiable. But without having those inspection reports available to us. So it can strengthen the seller requesting it in its present condition. Excuse me. Repair review. So once we have an agreement that the seller is going to do some repairs, over here, unless the buyer chose the contractor, as recommended that the buyer either have the inspector come back out to review the repair or have an expert in that field come out and review the repair. That's always a good idea. We are also using our final walkthrough in the house to check not only the repairs that are done, but now we're also checking, is everything as we expect it to be. The seller may or may not have completely moved out when we do our final walkthrough. If they've moved out, we're now we're now able to see things that we couldn't see before. Maybe there are scratches on a hardwood floor that were hidden by a rug, or maybe there's maybe they didn't paint behind the entertainment center, in the living room. So it's those kinds of things. So a final walkthrough here, we're checking for reviewing any repairs that were made, but we're also checking for other things. It could very possibly be that the sellers haven't completely moved out at the time of our final walkthrough. Oh, I did get it through it all here. So our key takeaways here, understanding the roles of the buyer, the seller, and the agent here. I do want to make a couple of other points before we break up. Repair considerations. So typically speaking, we are not going to, that whole page about not asking for repairs. The things that we would ask for are health concerns. So radon, if we find mold, have the mold remediated. So health concerns, safety concerns, again, that's kind of going into the FHA VA realm of things. If there are handrails missing, if there's cracked concrete, it could become a tripping hazard or that kind of thing. And structural integrity of the property. Foundation concerns are certainly something that we would ask a seller possibly to either repair or renegotiate so that the buyer can repair themselves. So those are the three things. Please don't, and please encourage the buyer to not put those little piddly things on. You know, a loose outlet cover. Oh, okay, well, you know, again, welcome to home ownership. You know, those small things, you know, that we do want operable windows. That was another one of the safety concerns. We would like to have operable windows. FHA, VA, and USDA require operable windows because those are our safety exits. So just be mindful of those things. Health concerns, safety concerns, and structural integrity of the property are the things that we would ask the seller to repair, the things that we want to address. Also, not only just ask the seller to repair, but to renegotiate, because sometimes we don't want those repairs made. Make sure that you understand the contract, paragraph 13 of the contract, all about the inspection period, what's covered, what's not covered, what can happen in that period, and also the renegotiation period. Make sure you are aware if your buyer is getting any of those, I wouldn't call them special loan types, but anything, any federally related loan, any government-backed loan is going to have some different kind of criteria to be looking for. All right, I did make it through with a minute to spare. As far as I know, nobody's coming into this classroom. So anybody, okay, I'll address the people online first. I don't see any chats in here. So does anybody online have any questions or any comments that you want to make? I'll make sure that I'll get everybody's emails addressed there before I close it out, but I don't see anything coming through here.
I have a question. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
I can, Amy.
Okay, great. So do you ever see like a seller saying, no, I won't do a reduction in price, but yes, I will make the repairs. I'll have my own contractor. Like, do they ever try to
Sure.
like kind of muddy the waters in that way?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's all negotiable. When we
Okay.
send that resolution over, we're saying, hey, we want a reduction in price. But the seller say, nope, not gonna do that, but yeah, I'll do the repairs. Sure.
Okay, yeah. I'm
All the
concerned
time.
about that because when we did our inspection the day before, they put railings in just so they could pass, code. And those still were flagged because they were done so poorly. And so that like horrified my buyers, like, oh, there's absolutely no way we could trust them to do any repairs.
Right. So, and it's all negotiable. And if the
Right.
buyer doesn't want to accept the seller's repairs, then
Yep.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Good question. Did
And do you
everybody
ever
hear
have,
something?
I have another question. Do you ever have a listing agent call the inspector just to get more feedback and understanding of
Oh,
like what they
yeah.
put in the report?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
Is that something you ever suggest?
No,
No, okay.
that's the buyer's inspector.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, but it happens.
Yeah,
And-
okay.
And here's the thing, and especially, no, here's the other thing. Unless it's, if it's an inspector that you don't know, I wouldn't call them. If it's an inspector that you know, I would call them, possibly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
No, those are good questions. Anybody else? Okay,
So, when you have it in its present condition, does that eliminate the final walkthrough? Or is the final walkthrough guaranteed?
final one. No, that's a good question. So for those of you online here with me, Jeff asked if the in its present condition eliminates the final walkthrough. Absolutely not. No, we still have your final walkthrough. Good question.
Because they can take stuff out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're still looking for
Well, it was.
yeah.
It was cobble plumbing there and now they.
Right, right. Or, and you're also seeing, whatever the personal property agreements were too, so, oh no, it does not. You still have your final walkthrough.
Can I ask another question?
No, Amy, you were limited to two.
Okay. So let's say at the final walkthrough, even if it had nothing to do with the repairs or something of that matter, let's just say personal property is moved and suddenly the buyer sees something that they're horrified by because they missed it because they were covering it up. You know, at what leverage do you have like legally to not close, I guess, and figure
No,
that out?
No, that's right. That's a good question. That's the purpose of the final walkthrough. So, yeah, or, you know, or let's say the seller moved out 3 days before and took the refrigerator, and everybody knew they were going to take the refrigerator, but the water line providing, to the refrigerator for the ice machine and the water, was left running. And so now we have ruined hardwood floors because there was water running throughout the kitchen for 3 days while after the seller moved out. So that's why we
Yeah.
have the final walkthrough. So absolutely, yeah. So, and the power is that the buyer doesn't close until
Okay.
things are worked out, or if they're not, then
Yeah.
we cancel.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the whole purpose of the final walkthrough.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amy, was your
Yes.
question answered?
Yes.
Can we go now?
That's
No,
Angel. That's not
because
me. That's not me.
I could think of more questions, but no, you know what, Angel? We can just have our own session later. Okay.
Jeff said he
Thank you
liked
guys
it,
so
so thank
much. This
you.
was very
All right.
helpful. I was in my daughter's doctor's appointment, but I kept my earbud in and I was listening to two people at once.
There you go. All right.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
If no one else has anything, then I guess we will cancel out. I will get everyone's, again, I would really prefer if everyone email me instead of me writing down your email address. So much can go out wrong there. Contracts coach, CONTRACTSCOACH at KWINKC.com. Or any questions about any of this or anything else. I respond to text a lot quicker than I respond to emails. And so my number is 913-219-2289. Most of you I have communicated with, but I think there are a couple in here that maybe I haven't yet. So, because we had some newer people show up this morning. So thank you all for being here, for hanging out with us for all this time, and we will talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.